Hi, Susan. How's it going with you?
Busy, good.
Good, good. Susan, hey, congratulations on your documentary, Julia Scotti. Funny that way.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Right on time for Pride Month that's
That's
coming.
the idea. That's the plan.
Hey, so tell us what sparked you to make this documentary about Julia Scotti.
I met Julia on Nantucket on a comedy bill that was produced by a friend of mine, and I fell madly in love with her first as a performer. And then I began to understand her story. I worked with her dramaturgically on a one-woman show. My background is as a screenwriter and playwright, and I worked with another comedian on a one-woman show. So I began to work with Julia biographically, getting all the information about her life. And the more I learned about her story, the more I realized that her story was so complex. She was such an interesting character. There was so much beautiful archival material that suggested the then and now of her story that it really announced itself to me as a documentary. So that was both practically and intuitively where I knew I wanted to go.
So initially, when you started this documentary, did you start the documentary about Julia, the woman, or her transition?
The whole person. It's not about, it's the story of who she is. So it's not broken down into um, chapters. It's her story of her journey, and that's what the documentary is that journey, the full journey.
Absolutely. What is she like in real life, and was it difficult to convince her to participate in this documentary?
Well, you meet Julia in the film very intimately. It's not a film that is formal in the sense of we have the public and the private. We see her in performance in the public, and then we see her very much. I don't know if did you have a chance to watch the
I
film?
did watch the film, yes,
So
absolutely.
that I mean, it's a very intimate portrait in the private sections of it. She was extraordinarily generous and open about access, and very much, this has been a 6-year process now, the making of the film over 5, and the post production and our festival journey another year. So throughout, we've become very close friends. There's a level of trust and that I've, doesn't come easily. One earns that. So I feel very grateful to her for that, for the access that she allowed, and for her trust in me. So the film is not, um, it's very much inside her story. It's, she's very accessible. She gave me access to everything. She opened up both, in terms of her interview and in terms of access to all of her archival material. She gave me everything. Every bit of footage from her performances when she was Rick Scotti, in which I could find home movies, which was really interesting. Buried in the middle of a VHS tape, there was suddenly a clip of home movies because there would not be a blank tape. So the demo reel became, the tape that was used for a spontaneous shoot. So it was like an archival dig, finding that material inside of some of this footage that was not always in great shape. So there was a lot of restoration that I did with some of that footage. But no, it's a documentary is, and this is a portrait, a full portrait of a very full life. And in that portrait, it's very much the journey for me as a filmmaker is um, that access, and that access is built entirely on trust.
Now, with her newer stand-up comedy stuff, did you film that, or was that also footage that she provided?
No, I film performances. That the film is all material that I filmed. I filmed 5 or 6 clubs. Yeah.
Wow. Well, she's a very talented and very funny person. I do have to admit that.
Yes, and she's sorry that she can't be with us today. This didn't get scheduled according to her day. It just didn't work out. But she would have loved to have been here with you. So I'm sorry she's not with us, Gig.
Hey, that's not a problem. One of the fascinating things that I thought that was remarkable that you included her children
Mhm.
into the film. Um, I, I got a sense that they had a little bit of mixed feelings, but yet they spoke to you about Julia. Could you talk about convincing them to participate?
Well, that was, you know, very much a part of what was happening in her life when I first met her. They had just tentatively started to communicate after a 15-year estrangement. So it was a very tender time, and I was really very grateful that Dan and Emma allowed me to speak with them and were so open about their journey. It was exciting to see Emma um, in the club, seeing Julia perform for the first time. So that was a really big moment for Julia and for Emma. And in that same period, Emma began to work through Julia's access for a talent agent who represents Julia. So there was kind of a lovely bridge to a career opportunity for her that she got to explore. And for Dan, the whole journey of even in the absence from the relationship with Julia, he had found his way into comedy. He was, you know, was and is a very talented sketch artist and has been writing comedy. So it became really clear to me that comedy was the language of the way they were communicating and talking about Julia's work, talking about archival material, talking about comedy process, particularly for Dan, was a way of finding each other and the language that they used to communicate. So it's very much the spine of the film. Julia talks to her audiences very frankly, with wonderful both comedy and truth. And good comedy comes from a truthful place. The people that give us the most satisfaction as audiences are comedians and writers who are able to tell truthfully stories about their lived experience and find the humor in the comedy of life that we all live. And that's what Julia does so beautifully. And I think finding that ground with Dan was very much a part of the film.
Yeah, I love that reconnection with with her children. One of the things that I also I do have to commend is finding the archival footage of Rick Scotti, making homosexual jokes back in the 80s, and Julia seemingly regretting to make those type of using that type of humor.
Yeah, it was a particularly shocking discovery, but what she says in the film and what is not uncommon is that she was struggling as Rick at the time with her identity. And comedians work stuff out on stage. That's where stuff surfaces. It's kind of, for a lot of comedians, the performance is where a lot of stuff is they're wrestling with. You can see that in a lot of top performers. And looking back at that footage was very shocking for Julia, but it was it was what was going on. She was trying to figure out who she was, and Rick was trying to figure out his gender identity, and that's the journey of the film, is that discovery. And 20 years ago, Julia transitioned at a time when that was not an experience that people understood. That was not an easy experience to have, and that we were not living in a world then where acceptance was part of the journey. So her story is unique. I mean, she's very comfortable with who she is now, very comfortable with every aspect of choices that she's made, and represents who she is with great confidence and joy. And that's at the center of the story.
Now, do you think Julia find more success now as Julia than as Rick, as a stand-up comedian?
Well, I think she would say that what she's doing now in her comedy is fearless and truthful comedy. And what Rick was doing was what Rick had, which was a kind of representation of what, was current. I personally think that Julia is much more successful comedically in terms of her material. But Rick was very well regarded, had a very strong career. So I think what has happened with Julia is remarkable, that she's on this journey now. She's just done a Showtime special. She's about to record her second album. She's on a wonderful tour right now. Her career is just absolutely popping. So this is a great moment for her to be returning to comedy, and everyone seems to be loving what she's doing. She's doing great numbers everywhere she goes.
I know you made that point very clearly with the America's Got Talent footage.
Yeah.
That was quite a discovery.
Mm. That was a great event for her. It was really a big turning point, I think, in her career.
Now, for yourself as a documentarian, is this your first venture into trying to document a stand-up comedian?
My background is as a narrative screenwriter and playwright. I wrote the movie Crossing Delancey, which I also wrote as a play. And my background is entirely in narrative film. So this is my first documentary. And what I learned working on it, I also teach at NYU Film School, and I teach screenwriting there. And what I learned in this journey is that storytelling is storytelling, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. The job of the documentary filmmaker is very much being a writer. I looked at enormous amount of footage that we shot, archival footage that I collected and completely restored. And in all of that, finding the spine of the story and writing the story. And it's really about finding the movie, which is no different in many ways than in narrative writing, where you're creating it out of fiction. And of course, the difference is that in real life, you get what you get. You can't invent. It's the lived life that you're telling the story from. So in this case, over the journey of our 5 years, Julia's story was full of surprises. A lot of very dramatic events that I had no idea, I could not anticipate, because that's life. We don't know what's coming tomorrow. And what's coming tomorrow for Julia there was some pretty dramatic, surprising twists and turns over that 5-year shoot. So it was very interesting. It was a very exciting process for me as an artist, but very much in sync with what I know to do as a writer. It's finding the story. It's finding where the story lives. It's finding where the truth of the story lives and structuring it in a way that is satisfying for an audience. And that's the work.
Well, after getting this documentary out of the way, do you want to stick into documentaries, or you want to go back to narrative films again?
I think I'll continue to do both. I mean, I think it's really a question of what I'm drawn to, where the most exciting project is, and where the access is, and where the funding is, of course, which is also a big part of what can make something happen, is where your support is. So I'm very open. Right now, I'm working on another project that happens to be a narrative. It's a series. It's a mini series. So I intend to go back and forth. It's what I say to my students is good stories live with complex characters with an interesting problem. That's regardless of the genre. That's what you always want to find, is a complex character and an interesting world and an interesting problem that character has to solve. So that's the journey that we go on with Julia Scotti Funny That Way, is someone who is on the journey of finding her truth, and in finding her truth, delivering that truth to her audience, and in delivering that truth to her audience, making us all quite happy.
That is true. Julia Scotti is that character. Well, Susan, let me leave with one more thought. As people will watch your documentary really soon, what is the one most important take that you hope that they walk away with after watching the film?
Oh, thank you, Greg. That's a great question. I think what I'd love for people to take away is that the path to happiness is being true to yourself. and being resolutely clear that what is good for yourself, what you know is true to you, is the path to be on. And for sometimes that means that some people won't follow you. That means that not everybody's going to be on your team. But if you're able to listen to your own truth and follow that truth, that's the path to happiness. When people don't allow themselves to be free and to be honest with themselves, that's where we get in trouble. What Julia has shown us is that her joy and her truth and her happiness and the people that have surrounded her in that journey are all about the centerpiece of that authenticity. And that's what she lives, and that's how she inspires me. And I hope our audiences too.
Absolutely. Audiences everywhere should check out Julia Scotti, Funny That Way. So
Thank you.
thank you very much, Susan, for
My pleasure.
sharing this conversation with us. And I look forward to your next project.
My pleasure. Take care. Be well, everyone. Bye-bye.